Welcome back to Learn SKN, and today we're going to continue looking at MOB Unit 2. We're looking at Unit 2. So we started looking at Unit 2, Objective 1, the nature of production, and we outlined Objectives A and B. And so today we're going to continue looking at Objective C, location of production. So quantitative factors such as costs, and you have quantitative factors such as the environment and those kind of things, right? So before you jump into that, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, hit the bell so you know when Learn SKN drops another video. So let's just jump into it. Oh, just a quick note, remember you can always buy certain packs from the description, relatively cheap. Alright, so let's just jump into it. So let's just look at what we're looking at here, location of production. Remember, in POB, we noted that one of the key things to success for a business is location. And so this is MOB, and this doesn't change. Location is one of the key factors that can make or break certain businesses. It can be very crucial to certain business types. Not all business types, I must say, not all. Some businesses, location doesn't really matter. For example, a business that does, online activities, e-business, e-commerce, those kind of business, it doesn't really matter where you're located because it's about, using technology. But there are some businesses that need to be located in an area where you have your target market, in an area where you might be close to raw materials, in an area where, costs and those things might not be too high. And so these are some factors that would influence where you put your business, where you locate your business. And so you have to keep in mind that location is key. It's one of the key factors, as I said, for certain types of business. So again, some businesses, it doesn't really matter as much because, whether you're here, there, some people can conduct business from across the globe because it's online. All of us can stay here in the Caribbean and, do some e-business, some e-shopping, get stuff right to us. It doesn't really matter that the business is located, in America, in China, wherever. We still get what we want done. Alright, so what factors influence the location of a business? And so we're saying here that there are two factors that influence the location of a business. And that is the quantitative factors and qualitative factors. And so we're going to break them each down into their separate parts. So we have quantitative factors affecting location. And when you hear quantitative, it normally speaks to something you can count, something numerical, something monetary that you can count. You put a monetary value, you put a value on something. It can be measured using a certain unit. So we have quantitative factors refers to those that can be measured in monetary terms. So in this case, we're looking at something that can be measured in dollar value, money value. You can see it, it's worth something. That's quantitative, right? Quantity. So quantitative normally refers to something that can be counted, something that you can actually measure, a quantity, right, in a particular unit. In this case, we're talking about costs now. So one of these quantitative factors would be site costs. Now, you will choose a location based on the cost of the site. Like some persons might want to put their, their store in the heart of their town area, but the costs might be a little too high for that, and so you can't really afford the rent in that area, right? So you can't afford the rent in that high-end place, and so you might not be able to locate in that particular area. It takes a lot of resources to get you up and running in that particular area. It might be that taxes might be a little high in that area. I mean, in America, you see some companies moving from California to Texas because of taxes. You see some movies moving production from one place to the next because of taxes. So that can influence where you go. Your rent, your taxes, those things can influence where you choose to locate your business. So if the cost is too high, you might not want to locate there. If the cost is reasonable, low enough, then that might be a factor that tell you, okay, let's pull the trigger on this property. Let's locate right here because the cost is something that we can live with. So the site cost, the cost of setting up your business in a certain area. And so if it's too high, you might not want to go there because all of a sudden you realize every month you're paying rent, and the rent is so high it doesn't even cover, you know, you might get X amount of sales, but the rent is so high, so you're basically working to pay the rent, and that can't work for nobody. And so you might just have to go to a cheaper place, go to a cheaper location. Taxes might be too high in that area, and so you might relocate, as I said before. Utilities might be expensive. You might have, you know, might not be able to get your internet or whatever you want based on that site, but to get them might be too expensive, and so you might choose to go to an area where it is cheaper. So site costs. Then we have transportation costs. Again, you can get the textbook in the package in the description so you can read more in depth. Transportation costs. This can cut in many different ways. It can be the cost of transporting raw materials to your premises. It can be the cost of transporting the finished goods from your premises to the final consumer. It can be the cost of getting your workers to work. It can be the cost of a whole number of things, transportation. But ideally, we're looking at, as a business, we're talking about getting your costs, transporting your raw materials to your site, and then transporting your finished goods to get it to where you can get to the final consumer. And if those costs are too high, that might be a deterrent for you to go and locate in that area, right? If you're not close to the raw materials, you have to pay trucking to bring them to you. That might be a little expense you're not willing to fathom. And so the transportation cost, whether it is for raw materials or the finished goods or whatever, if it's too high, that might deter you from locating there. If it's nice and sweet, close to the raw materials, close to the ports or the pier or wherever, then okay, I'm gonna go there, right? So transportation costs can be a factor. Then we have labor costs, right? Labor costs. Now there are some areas where you have a built-up of professionals, skilled workers, things like that. Look at Silicon Valley, for example, in America. That's an area that has a certain level of professional work, certain skill, you know, programmers and those kind of things. People are into computer engineering and things like that. So if you're located in an area where the labor costs might be too high, the human capital might be too high, you know, educated, college educated, you know, people got their masters, the bachelors, the doctorate, whatever, then that would demand a certain level of payment. And so based on the nature of your business, the labor cost might be a factor in your location. If you're not going to locate in an area where labor might be too expensive, right? You might go in an area where labor might be reasonable. That's why you might see a lot of companies tend to outsource certain things. Look at how it was in globalization, where American companies would outsource their labor because labor cost in America is a little high because the minimum wage might be higher than you expected. But if you outsource your work to China, Vietnam, India, Mexico, those places where labor is relatively cheap, then you get your stuff done that way. So labor cost is a real factor. I mean, you don't want to be a business and you have to basically send for people. Like you have to go and say, okay, I need this professional person, and you have to pay housing for them, pay transportation for them and things like that. You would prefer if they are living close by in the area. So you would try and locate in an area to where the labor that matches your production exists, because you don't want any extra costs. So that's labor costs right there. Then you have government incentives. Now the government would offer maybe tax breaks or, you know, certain subsidies to companies if they choose to locate in a particular area. For example, if a government wants to build up a certain area, they want to improve unemployment there, they might give companies tax breaks, tax incentives, subsidies for them to bring business into that area. This happens a lot when you see like schools want to relocate, because you know when a school locates, like a university comes in a country, that kind of, you know, upgrade a certain area. Look at how St. Augustine and Mona, and once you say a university is in an area, the area becomes a little built up and things like that. So government might offer incentives for people to put a call center in an area where employment is relatively low, right? If you look at when Amazon wanted to build their second headquarters, they had states in America bidding to get that second headquarters in their area. States are offering all kind of incentives, you know, tax breaks for X amount of years, lower tax, a lot of incentives they're offering just to bring businesses into that area. So based on what the government offers, then, you know, you might be willing to locate in that area. You had things like, airlines that service the regional area, when you had Leyte and things like that, and they chose to locate maybe in Antigua. They have an example right here. An example of this would be the new digital headquarters building, which was constructed on the waterfront in downtown Kingston. Jamaica would understand that. Jamaica, in a bid to encourage other investors as part of the redevelopment project for the capital city. So, government would offer a lot of incentives, a lot of subsidies, a lot of breaks to companies if they choose to come in a particular area, right? So that's one way that can spur you to locate here or not, because even across the region in the Caribbean, we are competing with each other for businesses. Some businesses choose which island to go based on what incentives they are given, right? So government incentives can really push a business to locate in one way or the other, right? And of course, we have always said that the main aim of a business is to make a profit, or in economics, to maximize profit, right? And of course, revenue potential would be a factor in determining your location, where you locate your business. It doesn't make sense to locate certain businesses in certain areas if you know for a fact you stand a chance of not getting as much money as possible. There are some areas where you have the market pull. There's some areas where, the heart of a town. A lot of foot traffic going to be there. A lot of people going to pass there, so you're going to have a higher chance of getting, walk-ins and things like that. And so you want to locate in an area where you can maximize your revenue potential. You don't want to go in an area that is slow, that nobody really visits based on the nature of the business. Could imagine a restaurant that is way out of the way and nobody really want to go there. A store that sells clothing way out in the countryside, when your target market would be ideal if you're located in the heart of the city, right? In Kingston, in Bass, St. John, wherever. You locate in the heart of the city, not only the heart, but the spots that people frequent. And so if you choose wisely, then you'll be able to maximize the revenue based on your location. It doesn't make sense to go in an area where not much people would frequent, not much traffic, or it doesn't serve a business well, right? So revenue potential, again, you want to maximize the profit, you want to make as much money as possible, and so you're going to choose a location where that is where my target market is, that is where I can fully maximize my target market, and things like that. If you're selling things to tourists, it doesn't make sense to locate outside of the tourist belt, right? Because how are they going to get to see you, right? So things like that you have to keep in mind. When all is said and done, the firm's main aim is to make money, and lots of it. Therefore, in addition to assessing the different costs that might be incurred in locating in a particular area, the firm must also examine the revenue potential of locating there. If the firm is able to generate huge revenues in a particular location, it will find it easier to pay the costs associated with the location. For this reason, some firms will locate in very expensive areas, such as cities or towns, because they can generate high revenues from the area. Okay, before we move on, one term I want us to go back to look at, right? This term right here, industrial inertia. Industrial inertia. What this means is that when you were starting your business, there's a certain factor that was pulling you there, right? There was a certain factor that was pulling you there, whether it is the labor cost nice and low, the raw materials nice and low, whatever. But then that factor diminished, gone, disappeared. But because you would have established roots and established connections in that area, you might not want to change your location, right? That's what we call industrial inertia. Because you already established roots and connections and things like that, even though the initial benefit has gone, you remain in that area. And so that's what we call industrial inertia. So we just outlined the quantitative factors that would influence your location of a business. Quantitative again means that it can be measured, in this case in dollar value, in monetary terms. Now let's look at the other one now. Qualitative, like qualitative factors. These factors cannot be measured in monetary terms, right? It cannot really be measured in monetary terms. It cannot really be, use a unit to measure it, but they are there. So they are qualitative, right? So you can't really measure the quality of something. You just know it is or is not, right? So qualitative factors. So we have one here right there. Infrastructure. Now, this is a very important factor. Very important. Infrastructure involves all those amenities like, roads, bridges, lights, utilities, all those things that you need, communications, all those things that you need to get the business running. You cannot operate a business if there are no roads to your business. You don't have any electricity, no internet, no lights, no nothing. So infrastructure is very important in determining where you locate. You're going to choose an area where there's no kind of utilities, no kind of roads, no kind of bridges, nothing. Now, that's going to be very, very difficult. So infrastructure, if it's built up, then that would be ideal for you to locate there. If there's no infrastructure, imagine you don't have any internet. You have to go and buy your own satellite internet. That can be expensive. Imagine you have no current or electricity. You have to go and get generators. That's gasoline, that's diesel, that's more expense. Or you might have to install maybe a solar system array or something. That's more expense, right? So you want to locate in an area that has proper infrastructure. Imagine you have terrible roads leading to your company. People might refuse to come to your company because the roads are so terrible. The cost of going to your business with you might be too high because the roads are terrible. Imagine how you're going up on the axle brake and the wheel puncher and all kind of drama, right? So that might not be incentive for you to locate in that area or for people to come and visit you in that area. So infrastructure is very important, right? Firms are quite aware that not all consumers will walk into their buildings to make purchases. This means that there must be a proper transportation system in the area of location. Again, you must have these infrastructure built out, the roads, the transportation system, the utilities, the water. Could you imagine you don't have water? Could you imagine you running an e-commerce business and no internet close by? Right? So infrastructure is very important for your business, right? That's one of the qualitative factors. Then we have environmental and planning consideration. This is more, climate smart, maybe government affected because they might want green energy and that kind of stuff. So with the realities of global warming reaching most, if not all countries, environmental agencies have become more vigilant in the pursuit of firms that breach such laws. To this end, and with more firms displaying corporate social responsibility, the firm must take these issues into consideration when deciding on location. Firms have to be mindful of environmental effects of production and how locating somewhere will affect town planning activities. So imagine you put a factory in the middle of town, all the smoke and blah 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 blowing up in the place, disturbing people, right? So you have to imagine you put a certain business close to a river, and some of the offshoots, some of the runoff might be affecting that river and affecting the water, killing the life in that river. So you have to be cognizant of where you locate your business, especially when you're talking about environmental impact. Some farms might have run down from fertilizer and things like that, and on a hillside affecting the water supply. You might have a factory with excess waste or whatever that might run into the ocean, into the river, into the water system. You might have, exhaust being blown out. So you have to be mindful of where you locate your business if you keep the environment in mind. And so that's something you have to consider when looking at location. Then we have management preferences. Very simple, management preferences. Right? This is where the owners, the senior management just decide, okay, we want to locate here and we're going to locate here. Right? We just want to do it. We just want to, regardless of everything, that's just our taste. That's where you want to locate. You can't do nothing about that. That's what the boss say, and so that's what they prefer, and they do it. Right? So this is a deliberate attempt by most senior managers of a firm to influence where it is located. The fact that managers have certain preferences can sway the firm's locating decision. Where the firm is new, the investors may have a particular preference for an area, and so decide to locate the business there. Some investors set up businesses in their childhood communities to give something back. So you see where we're going with it. It's just about the deliberate attempt by the owners, the managers, the investors to just put the business where they want it to go. Then no other factors coming into play but their preference. So that's a simple one to understand. You just prefer it to be in downtown, okay, fine, downtown. You prefer it in the capital, fine. You prefer it in your old neighborhood, fine. That's just your preference, and so you go with what you prefer. Other factors influencing location: closeness to market. Again, we mentioned this earlier when we're looking at the site costs and things like that. So if you have a target market, naturally you are going to want to locate as close as possible to that target market. So if the firm's product cannot reach the market, it may run into financial problems. Therefore, the accessibility of the market is very important. The firm should ensure that its customers can easily access its product. Where the business is offering a service, accessing the consumers is even more important, as where there are no consumers, there is no sale. Large manufacturers of products that may need to be shipped will locate near a port for ease of getting the product to the market. So again, the closeness to the market that you want to service, the market you want to serve, that can influence your location. And that's, of course, a very important factor right there. Okay, next one we have here, availability of services and amenities. This is very similar to what we mentioned for infrastructure. So you want to be located where you have, electricity don't just drop out every second, internet don't drop out every second, you don't have clean water, things like that. So you want to locate in an area where you can have what you require, the resources that you require. You might want to locate in an area where you have your proper labor, you have your proper utilities, etc. Right? So available services and amenities. And then we have this one, legal and political factors. Again, remember, governments pass laws that say a company cannot locate in a certain area. Certain companies cannot locate in certain areas. That's just the law. So you cannot put a pig farm in the heart of town. You cannot put a industrial-based company in a residential area. These are just laws, zoning laws. And so you have to really consider these things when you are putting your company in a certain areas. Right? You're just not allowed to put certain things in certain areas. Then there's political factors, right? Now, imagine you want to open a business. Do you think I would go into an area where there's always war and conflict? Could you imagine locating a business in the Middle East? How about opening a business in Ukraine right now? Like you're opening a company to get bombed up, right? So political stability is an issue. If you know there's always a coup every other night, it don't make sense to locate in that area. There are some governments that take over businesses just like that. You can't do nothing. They take it over and run you out because there's certain political factors that come into play. Look at Venezuela. You have a point in Venezuela where they nationalize a whole lot of private companies, just take them over. The state just running them. You work so hard and whatever, get your stuff up to thing, and the state just run them. China, same thing, right? So political factors can play an important role in if you choose to locate in a politically unstable area, or an area where governments are known to take over people's business and stuff like that. You don't really want to locate in that kind of environment. And the last one we have here is geographical factors. This factor is most important for businesses in agriculture industry. The climatic conditions of some areas does not make it feasible to grow certain crops. The firm will have to assess the topography and chemical structure of the land before locating there. Enough said on that one, right? You cannot locate your business geographically where it doesn't serve. Doesn't make sense to put a farm in an area that is all stone. Alright, I mean you cannot really do anything with that. And let's say you cannot go and invest in, let's say, a coffee plantation in a low-lying area by the sea. Coffee need altitude to grow properly, right? So these are factors you have to take in mind, geographical factors you have to take in mind when choosing a location. And right there we've had it. We looked at the factors that impact where a company chooses to locate. We looked at the qualitative and the quantitative factors. And so just like that, we have completed nature of production, right? So we have looked at the location of the production, the quantitative factors, including site costs, transportation costs, labor costs, revenue costs. Then look at the qualitative factors, including infrastructure, environmental and planning consideration, management preferences, right? So those are the key ones that we looked at. And so we have covered that, right? So we come to the end of the nature of production. You know what to do. like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you will learn SKN drops another video for management of business, CAPE management of business. All right, thanks for watching, thanks for listening.